Hello, and welcome back to Resilient Walk. If you found your way here today, perhaps you're carrying the weight of words that begin with what if. What if I had answered that text differently? What if I hadn't posted that comment? What if I had spoken up in that meeting? What if I had trusted my instincts about that relationship? These questions have a way of following us through our daily scrolls, don't they? Playing on repeat while we wait for our coffee order, echoing in our minds during late-night Netflix binges, haunting the quiet moments between notifications. Before we begin our story today, if this quiet space brings you even a moment of peace, I invite you to like this video and join our gentle community by subscribing. Now, settle in. Maybe silence that phone for a few minutes. Let's visit someone who knows about the weight of modern regrets and how the brightest screens can sometimes cast the darkest shadows. Hanny worked from her laptop in coffee shops around the city, the kind of freelance graphic designer who measured her days in deadlines met and Instagram stories posted. Her phone was always within arm's reach, buzzing with notifications, likes, comments, and the endless scroll of other people's highlight reels. But Hanny's phone held more than just work messages and social media. It held a museum of moments she wished she could rewind. Screenshots of conversations that went wrong. Draft emails she wrote but never sent. Dating app matches she swiped past. Job applications she started but never submitted. Every morning, while her laptop loaded and her coffee cooled, Hanny would find herself scrolling through her camera roll, past the carefully curated posts to the screenshots she'd taken in moments of panic or regret. The text thread with her ex where she'd said fine, whatever instead of fighting for what they had. The LinkedIn post about her dream job that she'd bookmarked but never applied for because the deadline was probably too soon anyway. What if I had been more vulnerable? She would think, staring at old messages. What if I had just hit send on that portfolio? What if I hadn't been so afraid? The worst part was how her regrets seemed to multiply in the digital age. Every unanswered text became evidence of her social failures. Every job posting that expired became proof she was too hesitant. Every couple's photo on her feed became a reminder of her relationship that ended not with a bang, but with two people who stopped trying, who stopped being brave enough to be real with each other. Hanny's apartment was filled with the artifacts of a modern life. Her ring light for content creation, her ergonomic desk chair, her meditation app that she opened but rarely used. But late at night, when the blue light of her phone was the only illumination in her dark bedroom, all she could see were the shadows of choices unmade and words unsaid. She had become fluent in the language of what if, fluent in regret formatted for the 21st century, where every moment of hesitation was preserved in digital amber, where every missed opportunity was just a scroll away from being relived in high definition. Then came the morning her phone wouldn't turn on. At first, Hanny felt the familiar spike of panic. Her work was on there. Her photos. Her connections. Her entire digital life, dark and unresponsive no matter how many times she pressed the power button or tried different charging cables. But it was a Saturday, and the repair shops were closed until Monday. For the first time in years, Hanny was forced into complete digital silence. The first few hours were torture. She reached for her phone every few minutes, muscle memory stronger than conscious thought. She found herself opening her laptop just to have something to scroll through, refreshing her email over and over even though no one emails on Saturday morning anymore. But as the day wore on, something strange happened. The silence began to feel less like deprivation and more like space. Without her phone's constant documentation of regrets, the screenshots, the saved conversations, the bookmarked opportunities, Hanny found herself sitting in her kitchen on Saturday afternoon, really sitting, without the familiar weight of what if pressing down on her chest. And in that quiet space, a new thought emerged, one that felt both terrifying and liberating. What if all those carefully preserved regrets weren't actually helping her learn from the past, but were keeping her trapped there? That night, for the first time in months, Hanny fell asleep without the blue glow of her phone screen, without scrolling through the digital museum of her regrets. And she slept deeply, dreamlessly, as if some part of her had been waiting for permission to rest. Sunday morning arrived with natural light instead of a phone alarm. Hanny woke disoriented but oddly refreshed. Without her phone to immediately check messages, weather, news, the endless feed of everyone else's lives, she found herself doing something she hadn't done in years. She just lay in bed and noticed how she felt. Her body was tense, she realized. Her shoulders carried the weight of hunching over screens. Her eyes felt strained from years of focusing on pixels instead of horizons. When had she last looked at something farther away than her laptop screen? Hanny made coffee the slow way, grinding beans by hand instead of using her electric grinder. As she waited for the water to heat, She noticed her reflection in the kitchen window. Not a selfie, not a mirror check for posting, just her actual face looking back at her in natural light. Without her phone's constant stream of other people's successes to compare herself to, Hanny began to see her own life with different eyes. The apartment she'd always felt was too small suddenly felt cozy. The work she'd been doing felt meaningful again when she wasn't constantly measuring it against influencers and viral posts. That afternoon, she took a walk without podcast earbuds, without a step counter, without the intention to post about it. Just a walk. And as she moved through her neighborhood, really seeing it for the first time in months, Hanny understood something profound. All those regrets she'd been carrying, all those what IFS preserved in digital perpetuity, weren't actually about the past at all. They were about her fear of the present moment. She had been so busy curating and analyzing and regretting that she had forgotten to live. The text she wished she'd sent differently. What if the relationship had been struggling for reasons that had nothing to do with that one message? The job application she'd saved but never submitted. What if her hesitation had been wisdom, not fear? What if some roads were meant to be left untaken, not because she was a coward, but because they weren't actually her roads to walk? Hanny began to see that her phone had become a museum of regrets, but life, actual life, was happening in the spaces between the posts, in the moments too ordinary or too private to document, in the conversations too real for screenshots. When Hanny got her phone back on Monday afternoon, it felt foreign in her hands. The repair technician handed it back with a cheerful good as new, and Hanny thanked him, but she wasn't sure she wanted it to be exactly as it had been. The weekend of silence had shown her something she couldn't unsee. Over the following days, Hanny began to curate her digital life the way she'd learned to curate her physical space, with intention rather than habit. She deleted the screenshots of old conversations that no longer served her. She unfollowed accounts that made her feel inadequate. She turned off read receipts and the last seen timestamps that had become sources of anxiety rather than connection. Most importantly, she changed how she related to the what IFS when they arose. Instead of immediately screenshotting and saving every moment of regret or uncertainty, she began to sit with them briefly, then let them pass. Some regrets, she realized, were teachers. Others were just thoughts having thoughts, the mind's habit of second-guessing itself in a world that offered infinite alternatives to every choice. She started a new practice. Instead of documenting her regrets, she began documenting her small daily choices that felt right. The morning she chose tea over coffee because her body was asking for something gentler. The evening she called her sister instead of scrolling through social media. The afternoon she said no to a project that didn't align with her values, even though the money was good. And then, on a Thursday evening 3 weeks after getting her phone back, something beautiful happened. She was having dinner with a friend, phones face down on the table per their new agreement, when her friend said something that surprised her. "You seem different lately. More present. Like you're actually here with me instead of thinking about something else." Hanny smiled, realizing her friend was right. She was here. Not in the past with her regrets, not in the future with her anxieties, not in the parallel universe of social media comparison. Here, in this restaurant, with this person who cared enough to notice the change. Later that night, as Hanny prepared for bed, she felt the old urge to scroll through her phone, to check the regret museum one more time. Instead, she plugged it in to charge across the room and picked up a book she'd been meaning to read for months. The what IFS still came sometimes. They probably always would. But now when they whispered their familiar questions, Hanny had learned to whisper back, "What if this moment, right now, is exactly where I'm supposed to be?" In our hyper-connected world, we have unprecedented access to information, to other people's lives, to infinite possibilities and endless comparisons. We can document every thought, preserve every regret, and revisit every choice we wish we'd made differently. But sometimes this gift becomes a burden, and our devices become museums of what if rather than tools for what now. Hanny's story reminds us that the shadows of regret grow longer when we keep shining artificial light on them. Every screenshot of a conversation we wish had gone differently, every saved post about an opportunity we missed, every comparison to someone else's curated life, these can become prison bars made of pixels, trapping us in past moments instead of freeing us for present ones. But we have more power than we sometimes remember. We can choose what to save and what to release. We can curate our digital lives the way we curate our physical spaces, with intention, with care, with awareness of what serves us and what simply takes up room. The most profound realization might be this: the life you're living right now, in between the posts and beyond the screens, is not a rough draft waiting to be perfected. It's not practice for some better version that exists in the realm of what if. It's your actual life, happening in real time, full of ordinary moments that become extraordinary when we are actually present for them. Your regrets may be preserved in digital amber, but you are not. You are here, now, breathing and choosing and growing. You have the power to put down the museum of what if and pick up the pen that writes what now. May you find the courage to be present for your own life. May you hold your regrets lightly, like notifications you can choose to dismiss. And may you remember that the most important moments often happen in the spaces between the documentation, in the pauses, in the silence, in the decision to look up from the screen and into the eyes of someone who loves you. Be well and rest easy.